We're ready.
Evening, please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Of the United States.
Welcome. Thank you for joining us this evening. Our first order of business will be to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, nay. Motion passes. Next, we'll take up the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless a commissioner or citizen so requests, in which case the item will be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda. All consent agenda items are commission action items unless otherwise. Are there any items that need to be removed?
Madam President, I move approval of the consent agenda.
Second that.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, nay. Motion passes. All right, on the regular agenda, our first item is the Integrated 5-Year Work Plan adoption. It is a public hearing, so I'll open the public hearing and we'll begin with a staff presentation.
That won't work. Good evening, Madam President and Commissioners. Christy Enselman, Planning and Projects Department. I'm here before you to present the 2020-2024 Integrated 5-Year Work Plan that was developed in coordination with partner agencies and the public and is in alignment with the adopted budget. The plan before you is the unedited version, which does not include the $3 million commission initiative for the community programs. As directed by the commission, that will be brought back to you in October as the list is not complete. Staff is recommending approval of Resolution 2291, the adoption of the Integrated 5-Year Work Plan as presented. For our planning framework, one aspect of the Integrated 5-Year Work Plan was aligning the document with the annual budget update. The first 2 years of the Integrated 5-Year Work Plan are the adopted annual budget, with a strategic plan setting the framework for the plan moving forward. The purpose of the Integrated 5-Year Work Plan is to implement ACHD's long-range plans, which include the strategic plan. The plan sets forth a 5-year integrated and transparent program of projects and planned activities for the district. The plan contains an introductory section that outlines ACHD's vision, mission, priorities, and strategic plan, implementation metrics, and the external funding plan, concluding with a program of capital projects. We had a robust public outreach effort for the draft plan, received a total of 491 partner agency requests, which does affect the prioritization. We held 2 public meetings, and we had a 1-month comment period from July 18th through August 19th, where we received 44 comments. To conclude, staff is recommending approval that the commission approve Resolution 2291 with the adoption of the 2020-24 Integrated 5-Year Work Plan, and I will stand for any questions.
Thank you. Are there questions? Commissioner Goldthorpe?
Comment. Thank you very much for including that portion to let the public and us know that the $3 million portion of our budget motion is still coming. Thanks.
So I have
Any other?
one question, and it's related, and that, of course, is that we approve the budget with a condition that we change our impact fee ordinance to make it as broad as the state law allows. There was no reference to that in on page 7 with respect to the impact fee ordinance. Is that because this was drafted before the budget, and that will, because I just want to make sure this 5-year integrated work plan doesn't supersede a decision that was made by this commission a month ago.
Okay, I'll have Gary address that issue.
Madam President, Commissioner Hanson, Gary Inselman for the record. We are working on our capital improvements plan update and our impact fee ordinance update at this time, and we'll bring forward those recommendations to you as part of that process in the coming months. This plan won't impact that effort.
Okay, I just thought maybe there would be some reference to that process since we reference past processes in the narrative. Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay. All right, this is a public hearing, so I will go through the list. If you signed up to testify, I'll call your name, and then at the end, we'll let anyone else that didn't sign up who would like to speak, we'll let you speak as well. So the first person who's signed up is Bonnie Hardy. And if you would, please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Bonnie Hardy, Hardey, 8301 Blue Heaven Lane, Boise, Idaho, 83716. I want to thank the commissioners for giving me the opportunity to speak today. Our neighborhood, Blue Valley Manufactured Homes, has had a very difficult year. Our neighborhood fought to prevent a fleet diesel fueling station from being built within 150 feet of a front door. We struggled to get city voting rights established recently due to an error when our neighborhood was forced annexed into the city in 2014, and an error occurred where the residents weren't able to vote in the city elections. Thank goodness we had Phil McGrange come out and visit us. He met with the neighbors. We really appreciated that. He explained what had happened, and he assured us that we would be able to vote in this year's election, which is a very, very important year. We struggle still as a community to be recognized as residential instead of industrial. Our community was neglected the amenities afforded to other neighborhoods, such as street lights, major road entrances off of South Eisman, sidewalks to ensure the safety of our children. This is the walkway that they have to endure during the dark hours, when there are semi-trucks zooming by. Phil had the opportunity to walk along that path with me, and he realized how dangerous it is for our children to walk that path. Yes, when I contacted the bus department, they said, well, they could walk inside the park and go an extra quarter of a mile, but kids don't think that way. They don't think I'm gonna get to the bus stop safely. I'm gonna get there quick. So this is the route they take every evening when they get off the bus, and every morning when there are no street lights that light up this journey they have to make. When we were annexed in, the planning department gave us all the reasons that it was going to be a great opportunity. We were forced annexed in because they didn't want to have a leapfrog development. And they promised us a better life because these city services that Mike Journey said we received would include better roads, sidewalks, lighting, and of course, we got to recreate at the ice rink. We weren't entitled to a park. So our community is really feeling the struggles still for the safety of our children, our elderly, our handicapped, and we feel the 5-year plan should include this. I've contacted the sidewalk neighborhood thing. They said, oh, we need 100% of the residents to sign and we could possibly get that. Well, we would like action instead of promises. We feel that the URD being built is not going to improve our neighborhood. It's going to cause the blight that they say is there now. We know that ACHD has nothing to do with the URD, but the URD has nothing to contribute to our neighborhood either. And yes, the mayor of Boise City elected to put us up on an overhead project during his City of Boise annual speech and put us up before him and called us a great neighborhood. Well, we want to be a great neighborhood. We want all the entities that are responsible for providing the safety, health, and welfare of our community to come forth and do that for us. We don't want to wait 10 years. We've waited 5 years without a vote. We want action, and we would like it within this 5-year plan and within the first year before we have a fatality. And I truly hope the commissioners tonight will take that in consideration, because we continue to struggle and we will fight. Thank you for your time.
Let's go ahead and wrap up.
But that's our community. We are a great community. We just need the edges polished and safety. Thank you.
Are there questions?
I have a request for you, and that is if you would send a description of which road this is and how long and what the coordinates are, that you would like a better facility for the children to walk on, and send that to Stacy possibly, or to just through the telesystem. We'll all get it and then we'll know.
That would be wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Madam
Which
President.
street is this?
Eisenman,
That's Eisenman.
that
Okay.
is Eisenman. That is the section of road that the URD has left out of their plan. They show improvement on both sides of it, south and east, expanding it to 5 lanes. That will bottleneck the traffic in that area. One other thing I forgot, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I want to thank ACHD for our speed limit, solar powered. It has made a wonderful difference on our road,
Okay.
and I appreciate that.
Very good.
Commissioner Baker, did you have
Yeah,
a
I
question?
just wanted to point out that streetlights are something that the city of Boise does, so
Mhm.
you really should go to
Oh, really?
them and, you know, use this election to be part of your request. The other thing is, you know, it is in an urban renewal district, and urban renewal districts are supposed to do the infrastructure. I mean, we can work with them, but they're responsible. So again, go to the CCDC, go to the city of Boise and say what you want as well, because.
I have a meeting set up for October, so I appreciate that.
Good, good.
Yes,
But streetlights are the city's, the city puts those in.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I just had a
Hanson?
couple questions. One, so there's several public roads, not just Eisenman, that serve the neighborhood. They're not all private, are they, within the?
The only neighborhood in the South Eisenman neighborhood is Blue Valley Manufactured Home Community.
Right.
And it is private roads.
Okay, they're all private.
Yes, so we were just requesting streetlights at the main entrances because it is totally dark. We have problems with emergency vehicles. And just to share a story, when it was reported that we did receive city services for the taxes that were collected, we had a fire a year ago in July. And as Ada County and Boise City Fire Departments were in front of the fire, one of the residents got the recording. They were kind of saying, well, you were supposed to respond. No, you were supposed to respond. And when I followed up, 9/11 did not have us in city limits. That's all been corrected now. Everyone we've touched base with has corrected the errors. But the only way we found out about this, and it's incredible, I've only had the opportunity to live in this community for 18 months. So in order to establish a fighting position for what was going on, I had to establish a neighborhood association in 4 days. And while doing that, I was able to knock on a lot of doors, get to know a lot of people personally, and they started saying, we're not in the city limits. Why is the city trying to tell us what's going to happen? And I kind of put it on my back burner page, I called it, and after everything settled with the city, that's when I went in to investigate. And it's incredible that it went 5 years, and the services, the one fire department said, well, my truck's out of water because I just sprayed down the 4th of July parade with it. and so, you know, my answer back to Mike Journey was, what services? And so we're constantly hitting heads. I'm still have my feet wet. I'm a nurse by trade, retired, but I still advocate. I'm an advocate for the people. So maneuvering around all these different things. I appreciate the directions and information. I hope within 5 years, I'm going to be well versed on the avenues to take and to help other neighborhoods. That's what we're here for.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
All right, the next person who's signed up, Brenda Yoder. And if you would, please state your name and address for the record.
Brenda Yoder, it's Yoder, and it's 2700 North 30th Street and 83703. And I just, I don't feel very well prepared here, but I just came to say that I'm really in support of all the bike paths, and that's what we can make them connected to have safe routes where we need to go and have alternative ways of getting places. So, I guess. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. And then Tim Yoder. And if you would please state your name and address for the record.
Commissioners, I'm Tim Yoder, and address is 2700 North 30th Street in Boise, 83703. I too just want to encourage you to fully fund and to build the bicycle network. There's an initiative out there for the low stress bike routes. I know several folks who said, yeah, I'd get out of my car and ride my bike to work if it was a reasonable way to get there. So I really encourage you to mitigate some traffic and get some cars off the road and onto some reasonable bike paths. Personally, I ride 7th Street, North 7th Street. Have you ridden that? Ride it sometime. I don't think it's designated, at least I don't see the signs for the bike boulevard there, but it's been newly paved, and it's a very low traffic route. It's a great way for me to get from the north end. I live kind of north and west, but it's a great way to get to Fort. That's a perfect example of a great bike boulevard. I know there's 11th Street and 29th both have signs for the boulevard, and those are fine, but the pavement's pretty bad. So anyways, I encourage you to fully fund and build the bicycle routes. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, the next person signed up is Betty Hovey. And if you would, please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Betty Hovey, and I
sorry.
live at 609 North Liberty. Ada County Commissioners and City Planning. Mr. Calderon, who's a project manager, I would like to speak in regards to the complete sidewalks on North Liberty Street between Douglas Street and Denton Street in accordance to the Central Bench Neighborhood Plan. I'm president of the Liberty Park Neighborhood Association, and the association officers and the board of directors supports that plan. We have more housing being developed near Franklin Street. We're getting a large number of new residents. There'll be 37 family units placed there, and they will be using Liberty Park also. We have a high percentage of families that live in our area, and those are low-income families, and their main form of recreation is the city park. The number of low-income families in the Liberty Park neighborhood is 76% of the residents, so we have a lot of low-income families. However, the access to the park right now makes it necessary either to use a back alley to get there, which is full of weeds, or walk in the street because we don't have sidewalks on either side of the street, on the side of Liberty Street. We have no stop signs and we have no stoplights, so you can imagine that the traffic gets going pretty heavily between Emerald and Franklin. Our neighborhood feels that this is a safety issue, and so we support this plan. From May until July, the baseball fields at Liberty Park are busy with South Boise Little League, and all of these families drive in from surrounding areas in the city and park near the park. The traffic in the park around Liberty Park at that time is really heavy, making walking and biking to the park even more difficult. Last summer, we had a traffic accident as a car tried to back out onto the street without clear view of oncoming traffic, bikers, or walkers. I have some photos that I have given you that shows the street parking and the traffic obstacles when the baseball families join the park. Some of our families are asking for sidewalks on both sides of the street because Liberty Street has become a circulation spine for auto travel on Franklin and Emerald. Liberty Street has become an emergency route also for ambulances and the fire department. I would like for you to look at your data of the increase on traffic, the traffic use on Liberty Park since that was opened up with the street light. With the street light installed at Emerald, much of the hospital traffic is going right down Liberty now. This has doubled or tripled our traffic in early mornings. At noon, a hospital change of shifts, and at 5 p.m. We do appreciate the highway department putting in some speed signs for us. We know the compact neighborhood street that accommodates for pedestrians are safe, and they upgrade the livability of our neighborhood. And I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to have input, and thank you for your consideration of the Liberty Park neighborhood needs.
Thank you. And we do have your
Fully
photos.
support the plan to put sidewalks in. Our only input is sidewalks possibly on both sides of the streets. And those are our pictures of some of the park.
Okay, thank you. Are there questions?
Thank
Just
you, and
have
we appreciate that.
Just have a quick question. It's in the plan not to be designed until 2022. Did you know how long this request has been pending and what the response was as to why it's not constructed until 2023?
It's my understanding that it was on ACHD list of projects. The last time a 5-year plan came up, and I think it was listed at number 5 or someplace. And in the meantime, it got dropped down to like the last few years, it was down to like 32 in that plan. So it kind of got shifted. And when we see it on the paper now, in the new 5-year plan, we just would like to keep it where it's at and
Or move it up if
It's-
possible?
yes,
and now
you have the community support for
Yeah.
that.
Now, Betty, you represent the neighborhood association, don't you?
I
Liberty Park
represent
Neighborhood.
Liberty Park Neighborhood Association.
Yes, that's what I thought, yeah.
Yes, yes.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No? Okay. All right, the next person who's signed up is Mike Losh. And if you would, please state your name and address for the record.
I go by Mikey Lush.
Oh, Mikey,
I live
okay.
at 1032 South Threeves in Kuna, Idaho, 83634. And the project I wanted to talk about was an overpass over the railroad tracks in Kuna. And with the growth that we're all dealing with, it seems like this would solve a lot of problems for us for emergency vehicles and buses getting to schools on time rather than waiting at the railroad tracks. Besides being a lot safer transporting for people going back and forth across. So I wanted to see how much that set with the commission, and hopefully you can help us out here in Kuna. Thank you.
Are there questions?
Comment? Yes, thank you. The overpass, you probably know some of the history of that. And probably know some of the price points on it. The city of Cuna, with their economic development director, is beginning to put together some plans where there might be an opportunity to do some joint work to get this to happen sooner than later, as opposed to much later than sooner. So if you would possibly keep in touch with either myself, I'm your commissioner, or Lisa Holland at City Hall, you'd be on top of things a lot more, I'm sure.
I appreciate those comments, because I do think it's gonna take a joint effort to get it done. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Appreciate you being here.
All right, the next person is Deanna Smith. And if you would, please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Commissioners. Deanna Smith, 910 Main Street, Boise, Idaho, 83702. Adopting the 2020 ACHD budget that restored community program funding and prioritized funding network gaps for people walking, biking, and taking transit was a great start to recognizing the need to provide basic service throughout the network, improve safety for people walking and biking, and enhance mobility. Essentially fulfilling your mission of quality transportation for all Ada County, anytime, anywhere. Now we need an integrated 5-year work plan that addresses these deficiencies in our network by bringing them forward to the top of the project list. You and your staff have worked over the years to make these improvements and recognize these, but we're moving way too slow, as you've heard from a few people this evening. Idaho Smart Growth recommends 4 transportation priorities for this and future 5-year work plans to speed up implementation. Create a safe and comfortable network for all modes. Prioritize basic, safe infrastructure over convenience. Use performance measurements that assess how well the system is working for all users. And lead on transit. We recommend starting with the implementation of the Roadways to Bikeways Master Plan. Developing this network through piecemeal projects could take another 10 years or possibly more before we will have a basic bike network. Implement the neighborhood plans that have been adopted and prioritize developing the remaining plans so these can all be developed and implemented within 5 to 10 years. Pedestrian improvements need to go beyond safe routes to schools, sidewalk ramps, and attached sidewalks on all new arterials and collectors. These will not create a network. And at this pace, it will be another generation of youth growing up unable to walk to a friend's house or a park. Pedestrian safety must include accessibility for all users and prioritize a safe and comfortable place to walk on streets with no accommodations over convenience for people driving. Set end goals for completion of the low-stress route, sidewalk, and other pedestrian gaps and transit infrastructure improvements that are lacking rather than simply slowly picking away at these problems with projects year to year. ACHD should take a corridor approach rather than a project approach to the 5-year work plan, looking first at safety improvements throughout the corridor. As the primary entity responsible for transportation in our communities, ACHD must be part of the transit solution. We recommend ACHD take a leadership role in helping Valley Regional Transit put bus rapid transit on State Street, with championing the adoption of the new draft plan and encouraging all the agencies along there that have jurisdiction to adopt it. Once we have data on the congestion relief that this might bring to that corridor, we'll have a much better idea of what additional infrastructure and improvements are needed to State Street. I'm running out of time, so I'll just close with really asking you to create an integrated 5-year work plan, not just this year, but into the future, that emphasizes mobility and safety over convenience and speed by prioritizing projects and a timeline for completion of a network that provides basic safety for all modes as is needed now. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there questions? Okay. Next person is Ann Hausrath. And please state your name and address for the record.
Ann Hausrath, 1820 North 7th Street, Boise, 83702.
Thank you, Commissioners. I submitted on behalf of the North End Neighborhood Association a more detailed list, so I'll try to just hit the high points. We are very concerned about safety. We all are. You are. And so we urge you to fully fund the low-stress bikeway. This improves safety for all users of the road, and it's fiscally responsible, socially responsible, environmentally responsible. There's nothing not to like about this, so please just fund it. And as other people have said, it does mitigate congestion, because I didn't use my car today. And everybody who rides their bike is not driving their car, and we take up a lot less space on the road. So there is an item that occurred. I was so excited when I came to your open house in January. It was on the plan for the Longfellow pedestrian safety. This has been in the works. We have been asking for this in 1985. As you know, my grandchildren are now the age of the children that we asked for this. It has been removed entirely from the plan. I was told by Chris Daly, who's been really helpful as the project director, because it was too costly. It was more expensive than they'd estimated. Now, I suspicion that there are a lot more projects in here that are coming out more expensive than they originally intended. The new price tag is $200,000, okay? I can name you children who have been hit on 8th Street, okay? Please don't allow them to get hit. Put that back in the plan. It was in the plan, it got taken out because it was too costly. If you took everything out that was too costly, there wouldn't be any plan. Harrison Boulevard, please put bulb outs or some other more pedestrian mitigation on Harrison at Residue. We're still asking for 20-mile-an-hour speed limits on all residential streets, not just in our neighborhood. It'll make everybody safer. 11th Street, we really applaud the 11th Street low-stress bikeway, but really the place where it needs it is south of State Street. So put that in, right? It doesn't really need anything except a sign north of Boise High. And to get to the Greenbelt, low-stress bikeways are for the young, the old, and the timid. I'm the last two. And if you have any doubts that this is really a low-stress bikeway, come ride with me, okay? So thank you very much for the opportunity to comment.
Madam President, I just have one objection, and while the word timid I've never used in connection with council member Houserath.
Thank you. Okay. That looks like everyone who has signed up to speak. So is there anyone else who would like to address this item? No? Okay. Anything further from staff? No? Oh, we did get a volunteer. Come on up and state your name and address for the record.
Hi, I'm Jason Durand, 2517 West Jefferson. I'm here representing the West End Neighborhood Association. We just want to thank you for re-including the Whitewater Park Boulevard and the Veterans Memorial Neighborhood Association or Neighborhood Master Plan for Cycling and Pedestrian back into the 5-year work plan.
Okay.
And also for the recent affirmation of the 27th Street Road Diet.
Okay.
That's all.
Thank you.
All right. Any questions? No? Is there anyone else who would like to address this item? Come on up. And please state your name and address for the record. Looks like you just squeaked in under the wire.
I have helmet pass, sorry.
That's
My name's
okay.
Hawk
We're glad
Stone.
you're here.
I live at 3921 Catalpa Drive in Boise. And I'm here because I believe in the low-stress bike network. I'm here with my son. We try and get around as much as we can in town on bikes, and a complete network that's built out with full connection makes that possible for us. Sure, we drive most places, but we do what we can on bikes. And as time goes on, that ability, I really think, needs to grow in Boise. That's an important thing for us as a town. So please do fund the complete connected network.
Okay.
Thank you very
Any
much.
questions?
Thank you.
No? All right, thank you. Okay, is there anyone else who would like to address this item? Come on up. Please state your name and address for the record.
Yeah, my name's Nicholas Ivins, 7937 West Crestwood Drive, Boise. And I'm not sure what the item is, but I think it's relevant. We live just above Chinden, when you go up Glenwood, between Chinden and Glenwood. And there's just one small strip of sidewalk, as you know, for all pedestrians, all wheelchairs, all bikes going both directions, because on the other side there's nothing. So that's just a little section that's, as I wrote a note today in by email, but it's a massive project to widen that or something, but I think you could just put another wall behind the wall that's there and widen the sidewalk even. So anyway, just mention that section, one section. Because if we're talking about connectivity, it's miles between being able to get up from Chinden. So, okay.
Right.
Questions?
Okay, questions? No? All right, thank you. Okay, anyone else? Oh, yep, looks like. Please state your name and address for the record.
I'm Greg Mercer, I live at 3605 West Kipling, 83706. And I recently started volunteering at Boise Bicycle Project to help, with maintaining and repairing and giving away kids' bikes. And I've become pretty inspired by the work they're doing there. But what really inspires me is seeing the kids come in and really, just light up at the possibility of getting a bike, the independence it offers. And of course, I think Boise is a wonderful place to ride. And as we're preparing to give away another 500 bikes at the Holiday Kids Drive, I think a lot about the infrastructure and how important that is. Once you get bikes in these kids' hands, you teach them some safety, and then you really hope that they abide by it and they make good decisions. But I think we're at a really important moment, and I just really wanted to speak out in favor of the low-stress bikeway. And thank you for all you do to make Boise a wonderful place to ride.
Thank you.
Other questions? No? Okay. Come on up. Please state your name and address for the record.
Thank you. My name is Anna Daly. I live at 1412 North 20th Street in Boise, Idaho, 83702. And I want to first just express my gratitude and appreciation for this body, which voted unanimously to support this low-stress bikeway network. I think that you should be commended for articulating a vision of our streets that acknowledges and plans for a variety of street users. First, I'd like to ask for a high-resolution image of the road of the current bikeway that was passed by this commission. There's no real high-stress or high-resolution image that we can use to look at and identify those points where the network could really be improved. Secondly, I'm asking for a commitment to build the entire network within the next 5 years within this integrated plan. As a lot of people have mentioned, segments of this system don't work if they're not connected. But of course, on the flip side, building this entire network in the next 5 years, you're drawing tens of thousands of bikes and scooters and e-bikes and others out of their daily car trips, which of course decreases the need for expensive projects as growth continues to pinch our roads. I think it's the fiscally responsible thing to do for both drivers and for cyclists. Of course, safety has got to be a top priority. I'm here with my second grader, my 8-year-old who's behind me. I have a 3.5-year-old who's at home with grandma. My 70-year-old father and my 67-year-old mother use their bikes. They commute by, walking. There are so many users other than cars, and this low-stress bikeway network, of course, is going to not just benefit those of us who choose to commute by bike. I also want to be a voice for our most vulnerable members of our community. Of course, our kids, my kids, all of our kids, but I'm also a teacher. I teach at Boise High School, and the kids who come from poor households, who do not have parents who provide them with a car, who are going to be using their bikes and the bus and scooters to pull themselves up, to get to college, to get to their jobs. It is just incredibly important that we have a system of roads that work for all users. And so I just would really encourage you to have a commitment to build the system in the next 5 years and not over the next 10 or 20 years. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Questions? No? Okay, anybody else? All right, seeing no volunteers, I'm going to close the public hearing. And commission?
Madam President, oh,
Yeah, go ahead.
Jim, were you saying something?
Go ahead, Commissioner Goldthorpe.
Go ahead, Ken.
I was going to go ahead and make a motion that we adopt the integrated 5-year work plan.
Resolution 2291.
Yeah, sorry. Where is that? Resolution
2291.
2291.
I'll go ahead and second that.
Okay, discussion?
Yeah,
Commissioner Hanson?
I'd like some specific site boards. Intent. A few things change. I think that the tremendous work in this has to do with the way it's formatted. We do on page 13 demonstrate where our arterial corridors are. And we explain to the taxpayers what we're going to do to complete all the intersections and whether it's 3 lanes or whatever, and the various sections. So we're very conscious of networks for arterial. That's a driving force in this plan, but we don't indicate what the corridor for biking and walking, and it plays such a huge role. We've already adopted a plan saying we're going to have that. For me to support this, I need specific direction from the commission that we would prioritize, set out the priority corridors in a similar way and demonstrate in a plan. And we could do that in the next 3 or 6 months when we anticipate completing corridors that we've already adopted certainly as the bikeway corridors. It's tough. There's some heavy lifting in there, but we have to be honest and say it's going to take 10 years to do a little piece of it. But that gives us a chance to set priorities so that when we have a bike project that's in front of us and, well, that looks like a great bike project, but it's not really part of the network. And we can say, well, let's save that money, put some other money in, finish the network and prioritize that. But we don't have that tool in front of us. The 5-year plan needs how we're going to fulfill the promise we made, complete the network. The second item I incorporated into this, rather than treat traffic calming and speed issues as separate projects, I'd like to see them into all projects. Whenever we're on a street and we're doing something on a particular street, if in fact the speed, the actual speed is higher than the target speed, then we should incorporate some sort of traffic calming, because we're already there. It's only a question of how do we do that and what that cost might be. Rather than wait until someone petitions, say we need traffic calming, and then we say, oh, we just putting in sidewalks over here, or we just finished putting in a crosswalk over here. Mandate that all projects to build to design speed, or the target speed. Tells us what target speed is, and we should be designing that. New stuff is being designed to that, but this town is full of old infrastructure that has roads that are wider than they're. The third is more of a in which things are presented, and I've discovered that as I was going around asking people, have you submitted your projects we're doing? And we have a list of projects, which are great, and so you sort of bounce bike project, to a roadway project, to an intersection project, to a bridge project. It shouldn't take too much to put this together and present it on a neighborhood level. And perhaps my suggestion would be use attendance zone for elementary schools. Folks in this attendance zone, this is everything AC committed to do 5 years in your neighborhood, and it'll involve widening this road, putting in this crosswalk, and doing this. Then they can actually see how it's all connected to that particular one, and it really does prioritize then the safe route to school, which we have a commitment to do. So put in, build the bike network, put in a bike network priority list and put dates on it. Speed, the traffic calming within all the projects. Back and saying, are any of these in areas where we need to address this? Organize this in a way that presents to the public on a neighborhood or and I would suggest a school, elementary school zones that are already set. And frankly, that would make this so much. Plays such an important role, improving the lives, the mobility, the safety of people, as well as the city does and so those are the three things I would like attached to a motion that would be required before I can support this.
All right, further discussion?
Madam Chairman, or Madam President, sorry. I don't have problems with any of the areas that Jim just discussed. I do believe that we as commissioners have the ability, I don't know if we have the memory to remember to ask for these kinds of things as we get into projects. I know that the priority list that we received from our various partner agencies until last week, I thought those things were pretty well handled and that we were on top of virtually everything. And then I discovered all of a sudden that the city of Meridian, through no fault of ours, had decided to change their priority a little bit. And so we're getting busy on a project on Locust Grove Road between Overland and Amity to possibly even go so far as to redesign some of it. We're way down the road on that project as far as the design, so it takes a major effort to turn the ship around a little bit even now. And so I spent some time, rather than getting scolded as I sometimes am on a consistent basis for one thing or another, doing a little scolding of my own today. And it was taken very well. I believe that we should probably pay more attention, as Jim asked, for those traffic calming and prioritization and a target completion date for the network. I don't necessarily think we need to put it into a motion to adopt this 5-year work plan, however. Thank you.
Further comments? Commissioner Baker, did you have something?
Well, I just want to thank the staff. I mean, this is a year-long effort, basically, to put this together, to work with the 6 cities and the county, with all the neighborhood associations, with the schools, and having the projects come in and trying to shift them around and figure out, what we can pay for within the limited resources we have, because realistically, our resources are limited. If we won the $1 billion lottery, I think we could maybe do everything, but perhaps not. So I just want to thank the staff for all the hard work that they've done. And I would just like to point out to Commissioner Hanson that this is a countywide agency, and I think your comments recently, just now, have sort of been Boise-centric, that this town, the city, we have 6 cities, we have the county, and quite frankly, because we're a countywide agency, we do have to focus on arterials in some of the areas that are experiencing extreme growth right now. It isn't just Boise City, it's North Meridian, it's South Meridian, it's CUNA, it's Star, it's Eagle, and so we have to look at that. And so when we come up with lists of arterials, that's because that's how 95% of the traffic works. Now, that's not to say that we shouldn't include, and we have included, bicycle networks and sidewalk projects and community projects. And next week, we're going to be looking at the 3 million and how that gets spent. And that's a good time to have a conversation about, you know, the complete network and filling in gaps and everything. But again, this is a county-wide document and it's not just for Boise City, even though, you know, Boise's a very important part. But, you know, I think the motion is fine as it is.
Madam President, I'd make a substitute motion to approve Resolution 2291 with 3 requirements, additional requirements. 1, that it be amended to include the bike network priority list that includes dates of anticipated completion. And that would be the bike network, of course, that we have countywide, which is what our bike plan is, countywide, and had many, many people from Eagle and CUNA and Meridian, who of course sit on an advisory committee. The second is to include an assessment of speed at all projects to determine whether there's a feasibility of including traffic calming to bring that project in line with targeted speed. And the third is to organize the 5-year plan on a neighborhood level using attendance zones for elementary schools. And it is my understanding there are elementary schools in all parts of the county, that even CUNA and Eagle have elementary schools. I see a city council member. And that would be a way of organizing the way of organizing projects so they know which projects are, so that would be a tool, an easier tool for people to understand how they all come together in a neighborhood. So those would be 3 things. Just one is more presentational and cosmetic, or in a tool of communications to the public, and the other two would be more directive to how we approach projects. So I'd make that motion.
Madam President, I just wanted to first thank you and the staff. I know this is a Herculean effort to get all this coordinated and be here this evening to present. So thank you very much for all of your hard work. I think Commissioner Hanson has 3 very good suggestions and ideas. However, I wish maybe we had started this dialogue a little bit sooner to, towards having this integrated into the 5-year work plan. But I would like to pursue this further, but I do agree that I don't think it's necessarily pertinent to adopting our integrated 5-year work plan. But I do think you brought up some very poignant and relevant suggestions, and like I said, I would like to pursue that. But
Okay, so the substitute motion dies for lack of a second. We'll go back to discussion on the original motion. Is there any further discussion on the original motion? Okay, I just had a couple of comments. I wanted to thank staff for all their hard work on this, as well as our partner agencies that participated, and members of the public that participated in the process. We always have a better plan when the public weighs in on it. So we appreciate your participation throughout this process. All right, is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay?
Nay.
Okay. Plan passes, motion passes 4-1. All right, the next item on our agenda is the Robinhood Subdivision Preliminary Plat. It's a request for approval with a modification from policy. And we will begin with a staff presentation.
Thank you, Madam President, Commissioners. Austin Miller, Development Services. Today I'll be presenting the decision briefing for the Robinhood subdivision. The applicant is requesting preliminary plat approval for 116 single-family residential lots and 21 common lots on 37 acres. The site is located on the east side of Cloverdale Road, just south of Deer Flat Road. The proposed subdivision is Phase 2 of the Falcon Crest Master Plan, outlined in blue. The applicant is proposing to convert an existing private road into a public street, Tercel Drive. This item is on the regular agenda as the applicant has requested a modification of policy to use sandstone blocks instead of vertical curb around center landscape islands on Tercel Drive, and to allow testimony from neighboring property owners. To provide a bit of background information, the existing private road was constructed roughly 20 years ago. It was built to serve as the access to the Falcon Crest Golf Club. As a private road, ACHD did not inspect the construction and has no maintenance records of this roadway. The ACHD policy allows the conversion of a private road to a public street with the reconstruction of the roadway. The existing private road has landscape islands, as can be seen here. These islands are lined currently with sandstone curbing. The applicant would be required to replace the existing sandstone curbing with concrete vertical curb and gutter as part of the reconstruction and conversion to a public street. The applicant has requested a modification to district design standards to reinstall the sandstone curbing along the center landscape islands. Staff has concerns regarding maintenance and safety. Although staff is not supportive of the proposal to use the sandstone blocks as standalone curbing, we are exploring viable options that would allow the sandstone blocks at the back of standard curb. This may include the use of rolled or vertical curb to facilitate drainage, and may include mortar between the blocks to address staff's maintenance and safety concerns. In summary, the applicant has asked ACHD to take over jurisdiction and maintenance of an existing private road. However, the proposal isn't consistent with ACHD policies and standards. If the roadway isn't constructed meeting ACHD requirements, then Tercel Drive may remain a private road, and all other roadways proposed within the subdivision could be constructed as private roads. Staff's recommendation includes allowing the applicant to work on an alternative curbing design that alleviates staff's concerns while incorporating the sandstone blocks. If an acceptable design is not provided to staff, standard vertical curb shall be constructed around the center landscape islands, or Tercel Drive and all other roadways proposed within the subdivision can be constructed as private roads. Staff recommends approval of the staff report as written, and I will stand for questions.
All right, are there questions?
Madam President?
Yes.
So was any discussion regarding keeping the sandstone blocks on the island as long as there was an agreement that the homeowners association would do the maintenance of that?
Yes, that is a requirement in the staff report as well. A license agreement will be required.
Okay, so they could have the sandstone blocks stay with a license agreement?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions?
Madam President, I had a question. When this was before us a couple of weeks ago, there was an item about the pathway being shared with the golf carts and pedestrians. I didn't see that in here. Has there been some resolution, or is there a change to that, or?
Yes, the staff report requires a separate pathway being provided, the typical sidewalk for pedestrians. It is my understanding that that has been resolved.
Thank you very much.
All right, any other questions or comments? No? All right, is there anyone, let's see, I think we have,
Well, the applicant's here.
oh, yes, of course. I'm sorry, the applicant. I'm asleep at the switch here.
Thank you, Madam President. Excuse me. Been a little under the weather, so as my voice cracks, I apologize. My name is Mark Tate with the M3 Companies, 533 East Riverside Drive, Suite 310. Appreciate being here, and as Commissioner May pointed out, I do think we've got some resolution on the pathway issue, and I can get through that in my presentation here. As mentioned, the property is on the east side of Cloverdale Road, north of Cuna Road. The property was all annexed and zoned by the city of Cuna. We've got our first preliminary plat that was approved in this kind of orange colored area. It's not show up well on the TV, but on the west side of the property along Cloverdale Road. So this is the second preliminary plat that is proposed to be public streets. And you would have noticed that the portion of the property is currently the Robinhood golf course, which is a 9-hole executive course. And before everybody gets really, really sad that course is going away, we do plan to rebuild a brand new executive course on the property as well as part of this project. It's not included in the preliminary plat, of course, but that will be done separately. The project is really age targeted, will be highly amenitized, includes golf, obviously. Pickleball courts, bar and grill is planned for the area. The golf course currently has sort of a pro shop, but not really great food service. So we've got a full-on bar and grill restaurant planned for the beginning of the project. Gym, swimming pools, and lots of pickleball. People love pickleball. So as part of the master plan, we did a pathway and trails plan for the project. It includes pathways along roads and separate from roads that we're going to be doing through open space corridors. We asked the city through our PUD actually to increase the standards of width for pathways and sidewalks along collector roads in the frontage from a 5-foot minimum up to about an 8-foot minimum. And so that really was the impetus for that discussion about what should be required on that entry road. This is the property. Currently, it looks like a mishmash of golf courses and driving range, but the new subdivision will be on the interior of that. The exterior golf holes will remain, and then the subdivision will be built sort of in the center of the area like so. You can see the new golf course aligned through the subdivision, and the entry road you can see on the south side of the project. So the entry road is included in this preliminary plat up to that first roundabout as you come into the project. So that roundabout would then tie into the existing private road that was built, I believe, in the early 90s, so probably closer to 30 years ago than 20 years ago now. This is a photo of the entry to Falcon Crest. We love it because it's got just beautiful mature landscaping, tree-lined street, median. As pointed out, the medians were built with hand-cut sandstone quarried from Table Rock. Some of the owners in the golf course property are also the owners of the quarry in Table Rock, so it even has a little bit of sentimental value to the owners of the project. So I really did say we would go out of our way to try to retain that sandstone as part of what we're rebuilding here. It is worth pointing out, we will entirely rebuild the roadway, the road bed, the sub base, the drainage on the outsides of the road, and do new sidewalks and pathway. What we're asking for really is to retain the sandstone curbing, which you can see a couple more photos of here. And as staff mentioned, they've at least come as far as to say they'll work with us on a design to try to find a design. If we can't come to an agreement, then it does revert to a vertical curb requirement. I'm not a cynic because I know staff and I think they're great and very good people to work with, so I am confident that we'll be able to find a resolution that's workable. It was just a little bit concerning in the language described as putting rolled curb in front of the sandstone curbing. Hopefully that's not the solution because it really wouldn't work. It would sort of defeat the purpose of having a sandstone curb if you put a rolled curb in front of it. So as long as it's sort of a flush mounted type of situation like we have here, it's worth pointing out this has been here for over 30 years. And while the road's not in great shape, for a 30-year-old road, it's in pretty good shape. So it was constructed well. We're still going to reconstruct it. There's clearly not been any issues maintenance-wise that happened to the road as a result of the curbing. There's certainly things that could be repaired, but you know, as far as any drainage, the road is already sloped away from the median island, water gets away from it. You know, they water the landscaping, but they don't overwater it, so I think we can hopefully come to an amicable solution on this. One thing that I just noticed as I read this, and I apologize for not seeing it before and mentioning it to staff, is there's a comment on page 3 in the staff recommendation that as proposed, the pavement markings for golf carts are not allowed. We didn't get into it in any of the conditions, and I have had zero conversation with staff about it, but I just did want to raise that as a concern, that we do want to have some sort of marking on the crossing. There's currently a golf cart crossing there. It's important just from a safety standpoint to have that delineated. You can see there's existing little sandstone, of course, stop sign for golf carts saying yield to traffic, coming the other way. There's signs as you come up saying golf cart crossing ahead, and they've got it striped currently. I'm open to working with staff on this, you know, whether it's a stamped concrete or colored concrete or paver with concrete, just something, as long as we can figure out a resolution, and I'm seeing a nod saying that we can figure something out. So do you think that's important there? So this was the original proposal that what we were originally proposing was to do our 5-foot sidewalk on the north side of the street, and on the south side of the street, you've got, I believe it's hole number 4 on the Freedom Course, where we were going to have a golf cart path. We felt like it was duplicative to have this big golf cart path just parallel to a sidewalk, and we were requesting that we do a privately maintained joint facility. But in discussing with the staff, I think we are okay with going to what we'll do is an 8-foot sidewalk on the north side of the street, 5-foot sidewalk on the south side of the street, and then we'll do a cart path parallel to that. So I did not update this presentation since I prepared it originally, so this summary is no longer applicable. But what I was really originally requesting was the sandstone curbing. Again, as long as we can come to a resolution, I'm fine with it. That keeps the sandstone and keeps it at a sort of a flush mounted look that preserves at least the look and the fact that the sandstone is there. The pathway is no longer a request, and I think I'm okay with how things are written on the golf cart crossing. So it's fun to be in front of you guys if that's the only thing I'm asking for. We're already zoned and annexed, and it's a really fun project. So if sandstone curbing is the only controversial thing on a project, then I think we're doing pretty good. So that's all I have for you.
Thank you. Are there questions for the applicant?
Madam President?
Yes,
Would you be okay with a license agreement for the homeowners association to maintain the sandstone?
Absolutely, and that's what we proposed. In addition to the landscaping, the license agreement should cover the curbing as well. And you can see with just the asphalt and the sandstone, it's held up very well. So I don't want to really overdo it with the design, and hopefully it doesn't come to that. But yep, the HOA would be on the hook for all maintenance of the sandstone and any issue with that.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant?
Madam President, and Mr. Tate, yes, I'm trying to wrap my head around this. Last time we had a very brief discussion, and I asked, what is the likelihood that this tier cell drive actually does become connected to the east to 5 Mile, which actually doesn't go through 5 Mile, just comes off of Kuhn Road. So that it's connected, so that there actually is. And I understand there is a high likelihood that it will be a public mid-mile collector road.
Correct.
So there's value in that. Public would get some value. Explain to me the public value of turning those private cul-de-sacs, the rest of those private roads, into public roads, what the public benefit is and why the public should take on that responsibility.
So I brought up the whole master plan here. So the east-west collector road, and I can't see, there we go. So the east-west collector road that you're describing is here. and it makes this bend down to this area.
That's Tearsell Drive?
That's Tearsell. So this is where we come in up to the roundabout here. So it's a little bit north of the, what would be the sort of the mid-mile collector.
Right.
And then it arcs down. So this is the existing active road. So as the project develops, have additional phases come in, you know, over in this side of the project. What we'll do at that point is come in and include this portion of that road where none of this is existing currently, but the ACHD master plan does call for a collector road connection in that location.
Right.
We'll come in to basically rebuild the existing as a public road, probably up to that intersection at the time, and then extend it as a new street over here. So the master plan that we asked for and got approved with the first preliminary plat in this area proposed private streets basically south of that collector, sort of in this area. So this area would be gated. It's currently golf course and sod farm on the south side. There's really no development and only golf course up in this area, right? And then these are farm type properties that will probably ultimately develop in the future. So I believe the ACHD master plan continues this as a collector road. We're proposing to take the mile collector road. This would be 5 mile off of the section line. There's a steep drop off right here. Ultimately, it'll need sort of angle across that slope to meet minimum grades. Property owners in this area are supportive of this alignment. So these would all be public roads, the collector road here, the collector road here, and then all of the development other than this gated portion would be just new public roads.
I guess that was my question, what the value, it sounds like the area to the north of Tearsell is not that much different than the area to the south, fairly exclusive, high end, it's a golf course surrounding, clubhouse and all that. Sounds a whole lot like a lot of developments we have in this county that are private, they have private developments. They pull off of a collector or an arterial. So I'm having heartburn understanding why the public would need to take on the obligation as opposed to the homeowners of maintaining those internal closed, they're not unconnected streets.
Sure. Well, it'd be no different than any other new development. Basically new development and new streets to provide access to them. We do want to differentiate the gated portion of it. It's proposed to be actually age restricted in that gated portion of the project, which sort of differentiates it from the rest of the project, which while it might be targeted at 55 and older, it is going to be open to other ages. So we do want to make sure that it's a different type of feeling that way. So that's
All right.
why.
Further questions? No? All right, now we'll go to the list. We do have a couple of people who have signed up to address this item. The first one is Bill Terry. And if you would, please state your name and address for the record.
I'm actually not in the city of Kuna, but my address is 6169 Raining Horse Drive, Kuna, 83634, and I've lived there for 25 years in October. The Falcon Crest entrance used to be at Deer Flat and also at Toon Lane. There are still several roads leading into Falcon Crest. The previous road at Deer Flat still has vehicles stopping to turn in and stopping southbound traffic on Cloverdale, where people want to turn in, probably according to Google. Vehicles also stop at the southbound traffic to turn east into Falcon Crest because the double yellow line is too narrow and the turning vehicles don't use it appropriately. Instead, they stop traffic. I believe there would be room for Falcon Crest to open up that entrance area and add space as well as an exit northbound for a merge lane. Then a safe, proper left turn can be made into Falcon Crest before a rear end occurs. The sandstone Falcon Crest curbing is not a safe design. It's not level nor square. You can see when it rains, snows, or ice freezes that the sandstone leaks out onto the roadway. This is advertised as a great existing road, but its lock gates are closed every night and open very little in the winter. Now they're looking at opening it 24/7. And these issues will create safety concerns for the school children and the active adults using the walking areas. The school buses will be less than safe with roads like that. The sandstone in question is not a viable, safe design. There's lots of excess block like that laying around the Falcon Crest property, seemingly as if they can't get rid of it. I see nothing historic or classic about the sandstone. 2 years ago, February 6, 2017, the draining water from this proposed entrance flooded under Cloverdale and flooded a house on the corner of Cutting Horse and Cloverdale. This was all runoff from Falcon Crest. There's lots of water on Falcon Crest property, and it seems that these are wetlands, complete with flora, fauna, and goose hunting. However, I see nothing about a Form 404 Clean Water Act dredge and fill, nor does DEQ or Army Corps of Engineers have anything on file. The city of Kuna called Falcon Crest an innovative community that successfully navigated the public hearing. I will tell you that I went to the city planner's office and asked for information about the development and was told by the city planner, Troy Beam, that we usually don't give that information to the public, again, because I'm in the county. I would offer my opinion that this development is not the will of the people, rather is an inappropriate relationship between the developer and the city of Kuna planner. I would ask for transparency in all these ACHD dealings, which you're doing very well. This part 2 of the development is getting more attention because the city of Kuna did not have transparency in part 1 of this development. Part 1 will be adding 409 houses and a commercial lot south of this entrance. That new traffic will all be funneling through the current entrance and will still have school buses, horse trailers, FedEx, UPS, garbage trucks, and the big cattle truck coming from the rendering plant, all in that mix. The ACHD CIP has no schedule for this area in 2019. The schedule is for 2031 to 2035, which is 12 to 15 years from now. I saw ACHD putting traffic count lines in this area, 82619. Can that be used, that count information provided here today, to help make an informed decision about the traffic? The other request for Falcon Crest to take sidewalks away and narrow the streets in the subdivision does not equate with safety. Where's the parking? Where do the kids and the adults walk? How will the school buses, emergency vehicles, and garbage trucks get in and out without dangerously backing up and hitting potentially a child? Please put safety first. The JUB surveyors were out on Cloverdale at this entrance, 8/29/19, mapping out the final elevation for the water and sewer lines that are being dug on Cloverdale and Kuna roads, so they could bring that in 5 miles from Kuna. Please take this into consideration as well. Lastly, putting these 2,377 houses and creating a Hidden Springs or an Avamore on Cloverdale deserves all the district standards be met, as well as the safety standards that go with them. Let's not let the developer profit on the greed over safety. Let's do the right thing for the families and the children who will still be here paying mortgages long after the developer is gone. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions for Mr. Terry?
I don't have a question for Mr. Terry, but this is a pretty good spot to ask a related question to staff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There's been some allusion or things mentioned concerning the probable impacts on Cloverdale and our current timeline for that. Is there any plans for impact fees from this development to be used to make the development more accessible and the Cloverdale section there more safe?
As Mr. Terry did mention, it is included in the CIP, so through this development, the impact fees collected from the homes built will go towards the roadway widening projects. However, as he alluded to as well, currently it is still listed as a ways out.
That far back, down in the future, even when there's many, many hundreds more homes there?
We are currently working on a CIP update. As new developments come in, we do reprioritize those. However, I don't know how the latest update will come out.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'll let you do that, but you got to come up and state your name and address for the record.
Bill Terry, 6169 Raining Horse, Kuna, Idaho, 83634. And looking at this, my property, Raining Horse, and I'm the second house in. And because we're all on 5 acres, that's why the city of Kuna said I didn't need to know this, because they only have to go 300, 400 feet. And 5 acres all go 500, 600 feet. So I lived there 25 years, told me I didn't need to know. But that is no outlet. Of course, there's no outlet. We only have the choice to go out to Cloverdale. There's nowhere else we can go. And pretty much everybody has horse trailers, cattle trailers, big impact on us. So that's why I'm asking for your help.
Okay, thank you.
Madam President,
Yes, Commissioner Goldthorpe?
staff, do you know when our CIP update is due?
Madam President, Commissioner Goldthorpe, July of 2020 is when we would be completing that and bringing it forward for adoption is the plan.
Thank you.
All right, the next person who's signed up is John Lawson. And if you would, please state your name and address for the record.
Certainly. My name is John Lawson, and I live at 1357 Cowhorse Drive in unincorporated Ada County with address CUNA 83634. I'm here tonight because I want to urge the ACHD, well, first of all, thank you for allowing me to speak. I want to urge the ACHD to thoroughly review this request and then bluntly just deny it, because M3 has requested that ACHD modified how your agency approaches road changes to Ada County, and I think this is pretty typical of M3. You've heard the M3 schmooze. The M3 schmooze has been really successful with the city and the Planning and Zoning Council of CUNA, and they took it over and they decided they'd go ahead and put 1,000 acres of development 5 miles from the city of CUNA. This has all been without incorporating any of our input from those of us that are in unincorporated Ada County, because we're not part of the city. So now it's the city of CUNA, out 5 miles from the city of CUNA. Unfortunately, M3 completed this end run around Ada County Planning and Zoning by using the city of CUNA and their planning and zoning to pull this off. And now we have the city promoting unfettered growth and essentially urban sprawl through the annexation process. Urban sprawl is only good for two things: one, the developer, and two, for the city that gets tagged with the incorporation of the sprawl. So I urge you to follow the CIP that the ACHD has developed to respond to controlled growth in the suburban areas, and not to make change just to your plans and modify your plans until it's time to do so, and that's in the 2030 to 2035 time frame. If there are changes that need to be made to our county roads to accommodate development, then honestly, who would think that anyone other than the developer must be held responsible for paying for all the modifications for the roads to their development? Why should we, as citizens of Ada County, not City of CUNA, be responsible for paying for these changes? If ACHD approves these proposed changes to CUNA Road and Cloverdale Road vis-a-vis this development, then we hope that you'll make the changes that need to be made. I agree with Bill Terry. The limestone blocks are pretty cool looking, but they don't meet the standards, and there are problems in terms of drainage, and it just needs to, if it's going to incorporate all the people that are planned for this development, that road needs to be changed to incorporate that. I believe that this agency knows the right thing to do, and that is make the developer pay for their development, and requiring those of us who live in the rural areas absolutely not to pay for it, but allow some input into this. So I'll stand for questions if you have them.
Thank you. Are there questions? No? All right.
Thank you.
And that's the end of the list of those who signed up to address this item. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this item? No? If not, then we'll go back to the applicant for rebuttal.
Mark Tate again for the record. Couple of comments to address. did hear a comment about pathways needing to ensure safety. Again, I do want to reiterate that we actually held ourselves to a higher standard of pathway than the city code and ACHD code requires. I didn't mention in my presentation, but there's actually in one of the staff conditions that says a 5-foot sidewalk along Cloverdale. I'd like to maybe put into the record that it should be a 5-foot minimum sidewalk along Cloverdale, as we plan to build it at an 8-foot sidewalk. That does meet ACHD code. It's not a real big issue, but should probably put that in the record. And then a couple of comments about Cloverdale and traffic along Cloverdale. We didn't really discuss the improvements that are being required along Cloverdale. You can see our plat boundary doesn't actually include the Cloverdale frontage, which kind of creates a strange issue for requiring improvements along Cloverdale, but staff has required those improvements along Cloverdale, and we agreed to do those improvements along Cloverdale with this preliminary plat. We are required to widen Cloverdale Road. We're required with the first phase to expand the turn lane. As Mr. Terry mentioned, the center turn lane currently is, I think it's 10 feet, and it feels really tight when you're in there. I think he said that it stops traffic sometimes, and we agree. So we are required with the first phase to actually widen that out, widen that turn lane. We'll put an exit lane on Tearsell Drive. I don't know who thought of that name, that's a bad name. But anyway, those requirements are in there for Cloverdale for both pedestrian improvements and road improvements. And as far as some of the comments on the project overall and the density and location, it's been in the comp plan since the 90s to develop around this golf course community. So it's been in every compass model and demographic thing and stuff out there. So it has been planned for development. It's finally happening. So the whole project has been zoned and annexed, and the whole project is not what's here in front of you tonight. We're just asking for this phase. So that's all I have.
Any questions?
Yes.
Commissioner Coulter?
So what is the length of Cloverdale from Tearsell north that is going to be improved, and what's the timeline for that? And you can go by phase if you wish.
Sure. The length is about, I believe it's just under a quarter mile. I believe from Cutting Horse Drive to Deer Flat Road is a quarter mile. There's 116 lots in this development. We're planning to do it in 2 phases within a year apart of each other. The entry road intersection improvements are required with the first phase. The Cloverdale Road frontage improvements are required with the second phase. So the first phase, I believe, is something like 60 units, and the second phase is something like 50 units or something like that.
What is the anticipated timeline for the rest of the project going north, and what you think Cloverdale will, how that additional traffic will be mitigated?
Sure. So the area south of this entry is going to probably move on a very parallel path with this phase, doing the age restricted and non-age restricted together. So ultimately we'll have some of the phases together. That age restricted area on the south side also has an access directly onto Cloverdale Road. We feel like the sales will be robust out there. It will probably be one of the higher performing communities in the valley, if not the highest performing, just from a total volume number. And what does that put it at 100 units a year type of thing. So from a development standpoint, we have a year of development, there's a year of home building. Before people are even out there and occupying the houses, we're still 18 months out. So these projects always look like kind of a scary thing, and people picture them coming all at once, but just like every other project, it'll be sort of years in the making and slow growth inside the project.
Well, I'm remembering the project we did down on South Cole in 2016, and it wasn't, it was a little bit less than 1,000. 1,000 homes less than what you're proposing ultimately here. But we wound up, having a real tough time finding ways to mitigate the problems that our approval caused. We were able to do that. We will probably not be able to do anything similar in this particular situation because of the increase in costs for asphalt labor and everything else under the sun that we deal with. So my concern is that these improvements have to wait until after your first phase. Is there any chance that you would be willing to make these improvements up to Deer Flat concurrent with the first phase being completed?
To us, it just makes sense to do them with the second phase, because by the time we're actually going to have the traffic associated with the first phase, we'll be doing the second phase. So the second phase will come so quickly thereafter that it really makes sense to sort of do it with the second phase.
I understand that. That's assuming quite a bit, though, in concerning the economy and how fast sales would. And I'm kind of a pessimist or pragmatist at heart. So.
And I do appreciate staff's comments about the CIP and just looking at the 5-year work plan. There's portions of Cloverdale that are programmed inside that 5-year work plan. So
way to the south, to the north.
It is, and it's closer to Overland Road, but got to start somewhere.
Commissioner May?
Yeah, Madam President. Mr. Tate, with your neighborhood outreach meetings, were the people, and I do have to agree with them, they are
Outside the 300-foot, sure.
Right. So is there a reason they haven't been included in any of these outreach meetings?
Yeah, and I can't speak to it personally, but my understanding is that the city has expanded the notice to 450 feet. We did do an additional neighborhood meeting and sent out that notice. So you should be receiving notices, and then anybody that asks to be on that distribution list, they're adding to the distribution list for any future notices. Both of the gentlemen were at all the public hearings, so I recognize
The
both
gentleman
of
that
them.
spoke this evening? Okay. Because I just think, it behooves you to
Absolutely,
work with these people.
and we've had quite a few neighborhood meetings, plus the whole public hearing process for the zoning of the project, just because we have multiple preliminary plats, and we did actually have a zoning boundary that went through some lots in here where we're actually down zoning a portion of this property from R12 to R6. So we held a neighborhood meeting for the plat, and then we held one for the rezone as well. So we're definitely making ourselves available.
The more information you can get out there.
Absolutely. And the nice thing is, with all the golfers out there, we keep all the staff at the pro shop really tuned in to what's going on. And so they're getting a lot of inquiries as far as timing and what's going on. And so anybody that's going out there to the golf course that has questions, they're talking to the staff at the pro shop and letting them know. And if they ever have a question that they can't answer, I hear about it and make sure they have the right information.
Just keep those lines of communication open. So
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Further questions?
Yeah, Madam President.
Mr. Hanson?
Thank you. Mr. Tate, normally I would have read a development checklist provided by Compass. I understand Compass does development checklists. I know they do. We usually get them for projects of 100 or more households, but we don't have one attached here. So can you enlighten me on what that development checklist might have said, or have you seen it? Or
I have not, and I'm not really
you
familiar
haven't?
with the Compass
Okay.
development checklist.
Yeah, they draw some conclusions about how this fits in with the long-range transportation plan and the impacts on.
I know that we did a TIS for this phase, and we did a TIS for the master project that they definitely had their checklist for. So perhaps since it's implementing that plan that they didn't do that, I'm not sure.
Maybe you have an answer.
Madam President and Commissioner Hanson, for the record, Mindy Walls, Development Services. As a follow-up to answer your question, Commissioner Hanson, I did follow up with Carl Miller at Compass regarding this preliminary plat and whether or not a checklist would be provided. And he said they did not provide a checklist for this preliminary plat, and they will not provide them for the individual preliminary plats within Falcon Crest because they provided one for the master plan.
Did we get one of those for the master plan, or?
We did. And if you would like in the future, we can attach it to each individual preliminary plat application.
That would be very helpful because, of course, the analysis applies to each of the component parts, so. Thank you.
Any further questions? I would echo Commissioner Goldthorpe's concerns about Cloverdale and having those built in the first phase, and I think that's something we probably need to talk about. I mean, my question is always, well, what if the second phase never happens? Then we end up with a problem and no solution to the traffic issues there. So that's a concern for me. The other concern has to do with the sandstone blocks. I mean, I understand that you want to keep that look, but I'm concerned about what happens down the road if something goes awry with the license agreement and that has to be replaced. What's the length of the roadway where there are sandstone
I believe it's roughly 600 feet, if that's an estimate based on if each of those 5-acre parcels is 300 feet, then I think it's about 600 feet with some gaps in the middle.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned about that.
You know, and keep in mind, you know, the HOA out here, you know, there's a master HOA, there's sub HOAs. This would be part of the Master Homeowners Association that would be responsible for collector roads. With an amenitized community like this, the HOA is going to be very, very involved and well-funded and that sort of thing. I'm sure everybody says that about every HOA, but in this particular instance.
And maybe that's a good argument for keeping it as a private road instead of having the taxpayers take that on. But, all right, further questions for the applicant? No? Okay, any further questions for staff?
Thank you.
I just have one question, just to clarify, maybe Mindy or Gary, some can clarify when the connectivity, the anticipated connectivity of TIRSO will be to the east. Are we looking at it within, based on the development patterns that Compass has looked at, and that whole, because you know, we don't know all the other development that's happening. So are we looking at within 5 years, 10 years, the distant future?
Madam President, Commissioner Hanson, we don't know because Tercel would be a collector roadway. It'd be constructed through development. So it would really depend on market conditions and how quickly the roadway would be necessary to serve new development.
But the connection would be to 5 Mile going south to Cuna Road, right?
Correct.
Okay, so it looks like it's not that far away, at least physically.
All right, anything else? No? Then do we have a motion? Commissioner
Yes.
Goldthorpe?
We do, but I'm going to need for Justin to come up and channel Steve Price for a minute. Good luck.
Oh, boy. Put him on the spot.
Yes, Justin, I would like to make a motion, and I would like you to make sure that I word this properly. The motion being that we approve the Robinhood subdivision and subject to the mitigations on the traffic and the Cloverdale Road being completed at the same time the first phase is being completed, as well as the sandstone being taken out and our regular curbs, according to our policy, being put in place.
So I think what you're saying is if we're going to take that on as a public street, it has to be brought up to all of ACHD's standards. Is that what you're?
Perfect.
Okay. Okay.
Madam President, Commissioner Goldthorpe, I believe that works. It may be helpful to specify exactly what mitigation you're referring to in your motion.
All of the mitigation that's required at the completion of the first phase be accelerated to include during the first phase.
it's the improvements to Cloverdale
Yes.
Road that are included in the staff report, that those would be moved up to the first phase instead of being done later.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you. I think that suffices.
All right.
Okay. Is there a second to the motion?
I would second the motion if there was added a couple of things.
Well, what would you like to?
First of all, I don't think a case has been made to accept any of the internal roads as public roads. So only Tercel would be the one that would be accepted as a public road. And the second, and I appreciate staff putting in the speed, because this is the first time we got a chance to see that there be a requirement that Tercel be designed to the target speed of 25 miles an hour. Because I think unless we specify that it be designed to this target speed, we run the risk of having to accept a road that is designed, they build it and design it, and it's designed in excess of the speed, since the speed is listed in here at 25. So that's what I would ask, that we not accept any of the private roads within the subdivision with the exception of Tercel, and that we require Tercel to be designed at the target speed of 25 miles an hour.
Well, for purposes of discussion, I'm going to go ahead and second Commissioner Goldthorpe's motion as presented, and then we can discuss it, and if someone wants to make a substitute motion, they are, of course, free to do that. Commissioner Baker, you look like you have something to say. No.
Yeah, I do. Thank you. I don't have a problem with, requiring the improvements to Cloverdale on an accelerated schedule. But, this would not be before us, quite frankly, except for the 2 modifications that were requested, and now it's down to 1. The first was the pathway, the joint pathway is now separated. So that issue's off the table. Basically, the only thing before us as a modification is allowing the sandstone blocks. And I don't have a problem with them keeping the sandstone blocks. We'll have a license agreement. I spoke with the attorneys about this earlier. Should anything go wrong with the sandstone blocks in terms of the maintenance, the homeowners association is required to fix it just like they would be to maintain the landscaping and the internal pathway system and the parks that are going to be in here, et cetera. So if this is something they need for their development in order to make it attractive, I don't have a problem with that. I don't think we should be micromanaging that. They asked for a reason, and they gave good reasons for it, and I don't have a problem with that. I just think it's micromanaging if we go that far. The Cloverdale thing's perfectly fine, we can add that, but, I'll see how the discussion goes, but I really don't think we should be micromanaging sandstone blocks, especially if we've got somebody on the hook to take care of it.
Well, I guess I would have to respectfully disagree that it's micromanaging. It's just enforcing the standards that the district has in place.
Well, we do, Madam President, we do modifications all the time. And there's no reason we can't do that here.
But there's nothing that requires us to take this on as a public street instead of a private road. So, okay, further discussion? Commissioner May, how about you?
Isn't it stated in there that discussion is still ongoing regarding the sandstone blocks and making sure that they are a little bit more permanent, or has that?
My understanding is yes, that's correct.
So that is still something that's being discussed?
Correct.
So, Madam President, I would agree with Commissioner Baker. I don't have a problem with the sandstone blocks. To me, what a road looks like isn't as important as whether it's safe. And so to me, the priority is if it says 25, we'll design it for 25, sandstone blocks or whatever you want on there. And especially if the homeowners association is going to take care of it. But I do believe that there's really no justification for accepting these other cul-de-sacs as public roads. There's lots and lots of subdivisions with private roads, especially those in and around golf courses, that the public has not taken on that obligation.
And I would support the acceleration of the improvements with Cloverdale prior to phase 2. So I would be in support of that.
Madam President, then I would modify my motion to remove the requirement that the sandstone be removed.
Okay, I'm going to withdraw my second and let someone else second the motion then.
I'll second it.
Okay. All right, we have a motion, a modified motion and a second. Is there further discussion on this item?
Just want to clarify, so there's no interest in the other commissioners to leave the cul-de-sacs as private. So there's a willingness to accept them as public roads. I take that as a yes. I won't even waste my time on a substitute
Anybody else
motion.
have a response to that or comment? All right, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay?
Nay.
Nay. So motion passes 3-2.
Can we take a break?
Yes, we can take a 5-minute break. Or do you need 5 minutes? 5 is okay. Looks like we're all back and ready to go, so we're going to go back on the record and we're going to take up item number 3, which is the master license agreement with the City of Eagle for wayfinding signage. And we're going to start with the presentation. by staff. Our lawyer.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Commissioners, Justin Ferdine, Staff Attorney for the Ada County Highway District. I believe you are all familiar with this agreement since it was before you 2 weeks ago, but for the sake of thoroughness, I do have a brief presentation for you. This agreement is based on a 2017 wayfinding sign agreement that was entered into with the City of Boise. It's in fact identical to that agreement, save for the number of approved signs. In this case, the City of Eagle would be authorized to install no more than 10 wayfinding signs within ACHD rights-of-way, of which no more than 5 may be motorist-oriented. The agreement would allow the City of Eagle to select the sign locations, but they must consult with ACHD first regarding traffic and safety issues. And the city is required to comply with all applicable federal, state, and local laws, ordinances, rules, and regulations, including but not limited to ACHD policies and ordinances. Signs posing a safety hazard would be able to be immediately removed by ACHD. Signs not posing a safety hazard but that are otherwise in default of the agreement could be removed by ACHD after first providing the city with notice and an opportunity to cure the relevant default. The agreement requires the city to indemnify ACHD from and against claims relating to the wayfinding signs. And the agreement has a 5-year term, but may be terminated earlier than that upon 30 days notice if the City of Eagle fails to cure a default. An example of a proposed sign is attached, is here for your review. The 2 locations that have been proposed by the city, I know you're familiar with, but again, by way of review, the first is on Hill Road, the north side, specifically near Highway 55, and you can see the amenities that are being directed by that proposed sign. And then the second would be on Plaza Drive, the east side, south of Old State Street. And once again, you can see the amenities that that sign would be intended to direct people to. The history of the proposed agreement is that it was approved by the City of Eagle on August 13th of this year. As you know, it was first brought before this commission 2 weeks ago on September 11th. At that time, the Two Rivers Homeowners Association expressed concern that the City of Eagle would use this agreement to encourage parking within the Two Rivers subdivision. And in light of that, then Commission deferred its decision for 14 days until today. And ACHD staff was asked to work with the City of Eagle and the Two Rivers Homeowners Association to identify language that may be acceptable to all parties. There was an attempt made to do so, but no compromise has been reached. The City of Eagle and Two Rivers Homeowners Association both have legal counsel and representatives here. They can address these issues in greater depth, but essentially my understanding is that the City of Eagle would like no changes, no revisions to be made. And the Two Rivers Homeowners Association would request that revisions be made or that the agreement be rejected. And specifically, the revisions requested by the Two Rivers Homeowners Association, you can see before you, one would be to Section 1, clarifying that signs shall not be placed within residential neighborhoods, nor shall they directly or indirectly encourage traffic or parking to enter residential neighborhoods. Signage directing non-vehicular traffic should be oriented towards public easement pathways and should not be oriented towards roadways. And then they propose a new additional section that would address the ongoing litigation between Two Rivers Homeowners Association and the City of Eagle and not involve ACHD in that litigation. With that, the Commission's alternatives then, as staff sees them, would be to approve the agreement without any revisions, to approve the agreement subject to revisions, which may or may not be acceptable to the City of Eagle, or to reject the agreement in any form. And with that, I'm happy to stand for questions.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Goldthorpe?
Yes, Justin, Just this evening, it became apparent that there might already be 8 of those 10 signs in place. Is that true?
Yes, this was first brought to my attention earlier today as well. We knew that certainly existing wayfinding signs were in the city. It had been thought that those had been placed there pursuant to a license agreement with ACHD, but it appears that it was in fact handled as simply a staff level approval. This agreement could sweep in those signs. We would need to ensure that they comply with the agreement, which would include reviewing the location to ensure that it wouldn't pose any safety or traffic concerns. In all likelihood, the fact that they've existed as they have without any trouble would suggest that they are in fact fine.
Thank you.
So that's certainly the agreement is capable of addressing those outstanding signs.
Okay, further questions?
Madam President?
Commissioner Baker?
Yeah, Mr. Frieden, doesn't the existing agreement basically state that all state laws and court cases will be agreed with?
Yes, Commissioner Baker, Madam President. It doesn't expressly call out court cases, but it does refer to all, federal, state, and local laws, ordinances, et cetera. Certainly laws would be a broad enough category to include any applicable court orders.
Okay. And we basically have the ability to disapprove a location, do we not, under the existing agreement?
When a new location is proposed, it has to be taken to us, and we have to review it for traffic and safety concerns. Assuming that it satisfies those issues that could be put in, assuming it's not otherwise in default of the agreement for some reason.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions? Commissioner
This is
May?
probably a better question for the city representatives. My question was, back in 2016, there were 12 signs that had been approved, and there was an MOA between the urban renewal and the city of Eagle. And so I was just, those 8 signs, so if they only did 10, so the 8 signs that are already up, are they grandfathered then into this agreement? And so then no more than just 2 more would be placed? I can wait till the experts get up here and
Yes, well,
directly
Commissioner
to-
May, Madam President, as stated previously, our desire, I think, would be to sweep those existing 8 into this agreement. Essentially, anything that is within our right-of-way should be subject to a license agreement, and this would then be a proper vehicle for doing so, assuming that the existing signs meet all the necessary requirements.
Any other questions, Commissioner Hanson?
Quick question. The city does a ton of stuff in the right of way, lots and lots of things. In fact, they get in there and some of them shovel snow. They do all kinds of things, put up a bike rack or do things. Do we have to have a license agreement for every single thing that the city chooses to do in its own jurisdiction within the ACHD right of way?
Commissioner Hanson, Madam President, certainly activities such as shoveling snow, an activity is not required to obtain a license agreement, but a structure essentially is. And the cities do come, and yeah, as you know, they do come to us from time to time with bike racks and things of that nature that they do place within our rights of way.
And that's usually handled at the staff level?
It often is, if it's with the city, it actually would be brought to the commission because it would be considered an interagency agreement, and by statute, all interagency agreements need to have commission approval. They're placed on the consent agenda, and they are extremely, extremely rarely subject to any concern or discussion.
Okay, any other questions? I just have one. The proposed changes that the homeowners association made, is there any legal reason that ACHD, that these would be problematic for ACHD to include those? I mean, do they create any problems for?
Madam President, I think as far as ACHD is concerned, as far as staff is concerned, the proposed revisions are acceptable from a legal standpoint. I mean, there's nothing in them which would cause any legal problems. It's more of a policy level decision, and then certainly I expect the city to address their concerns about that language. But The short answer to your question is no, we don't see any legal issues raised by the proposed language.
Okay. All right, anything further for our attorney? No? Okay, then,
Not right now.
okay. Then we'll hear from the applicant, the City of Eagle. And if you would, please state your name and address for the record, even though I think most of us know you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, Commissioners. My name is Todd Lakey. My firm, Borton Lakey Law, is legal counsel to the City of Eagle. Our address is 141 East Carlton, Meridian, Idaho. Madam Chairman and Commissioners, as staff mentioned, our request tonight is that you approve the agreement that was prepared by ACHD staff and provided to the city for approval. Previously, as was mentioned, I think the City of Eagle worked with ACHD staff on a sign-by-sign basis, and those 8 signs were installed actually by ACHD. So they're now covered by this agreement. The agreement limits it to 10 signs, so we can't exceed those 10 signs. The request, when we made an additional request for 2 more, I think that may have been when it was discovered that there wasn't a license agreement and there needed to be one. We don't have a problem with that. As staff stated, the city has already approved the license agreement with ACHD. Now we have some additional language that's coming from those in the Two Rivers subdivision. And to our knowledge, no other master license agreement with any other city has this kind of language. We think the City of Eagle should be treated the same as every other city. The proposed language comes from some litigation involving a very small parking area, 4 spaces within the Two Rivers subdivision, that is an access point for the Greenbelt. And the litigation was essentially over whether there was an adequate dedication that was legally sufficient. Dennis Baker was the developer. He proposed the subdivision and the access, but ultimately the district court said that the dedication wasn't sufficient. That's on appeal. But this license agreement and those 4 parking spaces, that litigation, are irrelevant. The agreement's for 10 signs, and location is described as mentioned in the staff report for those 2 additional ones, north side of Hill Road and the east side of Plaza Drive. We have no budget in the City of Eagle to do additional signs beyond those 10, the 2 additional ones. And as was referenced by staff, you have the ability, if there's a safety issue, to deny a location or pull a sign out under the agreement. So ACHD is well protected in the agreement from a safety perspective. The language they're proposing is problematic, that there be no signs in a residential neighborhood, or that they not directly or indirectly inform the public of amenities. Those are public amenities. The public should be made aware of those kind of amenities. It's for their use. The public funds were used to construct them often and maintain them currently. Also, the reference to pending litigation is unnecessary. It's very unusual, and it's very Two Rivers specific, specifically referencing even signage within so many feet of Two Rivers. So, Commissioners, from a public policy standpoint, the additional language makes no sense. We're talking about public roads and public right-of-ways and public amenities. There shouldn't be this kind of limitation on informing the public about bike paths and trails and the Greenbelt. Essentially what we have in this case is a specific group of people within a certain subdivision asking that they be treated differently than the rest of the public. These kind of amenities are what bring people to live in the City of Eagle. They like the access to the Greenbelt. They like the connectivity with Eagle Island State Park. These are public amenities that it's very appropriate to inform the public about those amenities and their ability to know where they are and to utilize them. We're not asking for that kind of signage. I want to state that out of the gate. We're talking about 2 additional signs at those specific locations. But we're talking about a policy, a public policy in regard to that additional language that's being proposed. And that proposed language is asking you to treat certain people in one city differently from everyone else in every other city. I'd ask that you approve the license agreement as presented and signed by the City of Eagle and reject the proposed language. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Golder?
Thank you. Mr. Lakey, you probably know full well that the reason for the opposition by the the folks in Two Rivers is because they don't trust the city. And, that's rather curious to me. Public policy is supposed to probably, I would think, supposed to engender public trust. And that's already gone. And that's why the fear is that what these signs might ultimately do is direct activities that are viewed by the homeowners association to be detrimental to their residents, not to impinge upon public right-of-ways or the opportunities for folks to park their cars on public roads, but the fear is that they might direct people to do so in retaliation for what you already know has happened. So I'm just concerned that I don't think this additional language messes with anybody's rights or your public policies at all. It's just incident specific. And if it weren't viewed to be so necessary by others, then we wouldn't even be considering it.
Madam Chairman and Commissioner Goldthorpe, appreciate the comments. I would certainly acknowledge that litigation doesn't necessarily foster positive feelings one toward the other. So I acknowledge that. But what we are talking about here is language that's very broad. You can't have any signage directing anyone to a residential area. You can't have signage in a residential area. This is very broad language that, again, is very bad from a public policy perspective. These amenities that we're talking about are intended for public use. They're put in so people will use them. They're an amenity that's beneficial to the community. If we're talking about public safety, if that's the contention from those that were proposing the language, that's addressed and available. You have the discretion to say, nope, we're not going to inform people or direct people in this location through these streets because it's not safe. You have the ability to deny that. So what they're proposing, again, as I said, is bad public policy, and you have the ability to address safety.
Madam President?
Yes, Commissioner Baker?
So there's Gerber Park and what's the other park?
Merrill?
Heritage as well.
Pardon?
There's several.
Heritage, Merrill, Gerber. Okay. Are they in residential areas?
Madam Chairman and Commissioner Baker, I might defer to Nicole on specific knowledge about which parks are where. I handle legal issues, but not so much the placement of parks.
And the reason why I ask that is because if they are in residential areas and you're trying to provide someone directions to a park in a residential area, this language would not allow that.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
President, so I don't think in this instance that they're referring to, it's not a park, correct? It's river access on the other end of Two Rivers.
Madam Chairman and Commissioner May, that's essentially what the litigation was about, the forced parking spaces near the access to the Greenbelt.
But a park.
Two Rivers. It was access to the Greenbelt. But the language in this says you simply can't direct public to a residential area or through a residential area with wayfinding and signage. So that would eliminate your references to bike paths, parks, any other amenity. Can't be, and if it's located in a residential area, this would exclude the ability to do that, to provide the public with that information.
So I have a couple concerns. When this project first took flight back in 2016, the reason given, the objective was for economic development and to have the wayfaring signs, downtown shopping, City Hall, library, etc. And at that time, and perhaps you've amended it, it was for placement of signs. And at that time, the bid was for 12 signs, and it was my understanding that the city purchased 12 signs, but I guess only 8 were placed. Is that correct?
Madam Chair and Commissioner May, again, I may defer to Nicole on what was purchased, but my understanding is there's only 8 signs that have been installed, and this would only provide for 10 total.
And then another thing, perhaps you could clarify as well, that the placement of these signs was to only be in the Eagle Urban Renewal District, Phase 1? There was discussion that there would be additional phasing.
Madam Chair and Commissioner May, this agreement doesn't limit it to that. The 10 signs consist of those 8 that are already installed, and then those 2 additional ones at these locations. So we're not asking for signs in the Two Rivers subdivisions. We simply just don't want that public policy limitation to be included in the agreement. If somewhere, sometime down the road, this agreement was modified to include additional signage, or perhaps we were looking at relocating something.
Are there other cities that have the directional signs that have this type of agreement already in place?
Madam Chairman and Commissioner May, license agreements, as was mentioned by staff, are very common.
For the directional signage?
And directional and wayfinding signage, I'm also the attorney for the Urban Renewal District in Meridian, and they have wayfinding signage in their downtown.
So they have, I know they have historic district, and I think that's kind of where the committee that worked on this got some of their ideas, but they actually have arrows directing people.
They have arrows, they have kiosks that also show different activities, different historic sites, different businesses, pathways, those kind of things.
So this agreement then this evening would negate and render void the memo of agreement with the City of Eagle and the Eagle Urban Renewal Agency about the placement of signs. So that is a moot right now.
Madam Chairman and Commissioner May, this agreement would certainly control over that. ACHD has jurisdiction over the right-of-way. So whatever is placed in the right-of-way has to be subject to your license agreement. So the city and the Urban Renewal District couldn't agree to do something different than what this agreement specifies.
I don't think Two Rivers or Eagle Road are in the Eagle Urban Renewal District. That was my point.
Oh, Madam Chairman and Commissioner May, I believe that's correct. However, this license agreement is broader than that. It covers the entire city.
Probably, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, maybe Nicole, probably when she gets up here, then can more readily address the shift in the objective and the thinking with the signs. But
sure,
that's kind of where I was going.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Lakey.
Sure.
Okay, any further questions for Mr. Lakey? No? Do you want to have Nicole come up and address the
That
other
would be great,
questions?
Madam Chair.
Okay. And if you would, Nicole, please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Commissioners. Nicole Baird Spencer, Planner 3 for the City of Eagle, 660 East Civic Lane, Eagle, Idaho. So I'm just going to address your questions. I really didn't plan on testifying. I said only if necessary. So
I could see you back there.
only if necessary. But so just to clarify a few things, as you asked, it was originally formed as a URA project, an Eagle Urban Renewal Agency project. There was an MOU that allowed for 7 planter signs and 5 freestanding signs. The city then only funded 8. The signs that are now being proposed, that are exact same signs, are no longer through the Eagle Urban Renewal Agency. They're actually through the Eagle Arts Commission. They were additional signs that do direct people into our downtown and amenities within the core of the city. This agreement would max out the signs for the City of Eagle. We do not have any. At the time, we only bought 8 at those 8 locations that had been identified. We would be buying 2 more. We were hoping to do it this current budget cycle, but as October 1st is quickly approaching, it will probably be deferred to next budget cycle. But when we started in June, we were thinking we'd be able to do that. The signs are not all in the Eagle Urban Renewal Agency area. The sign on Hill Road is not, but it is an entry corridor to the city. It's pointing people into the city from Highway 55. What I would tell you, my brain froze. They do point to amenities and different features within the community. They're not just parks and trails, but they do that. The Hill Road sign is in a residential corridor. All of Hill Road is in a residential 4 designation within the comprehensive plan. So the language as proposed would prohibit us from directing people in that area. Our intent is not to direct people into a neighborhood, but to get people to amenities that have been paid for and are maintained by the city that we feel are bettering people's lives. The city has, as we said, it has 8 today. We're asking for these 2 more, and that is
where we're at. Any additional changes have to come back to this commission for us to add anything additional. Quite honestly, in 2016-17, when we installed these signs, we worked with ACHD staff. We thought we had done what we needed to do. It wasn't until we came back for the last 2 signs that we were said, oh, maybe you should have a license agreement for this whole thing. To the extent in which your staff installed the signs for us. We were in consultation with you the whole way, and we don't want to be out of lockstep with you, but we also recognize the agreement we're doing has nothing to do with what is being asked to be amended into the agreement. We would just like to keep it simple and straightforward. You have 8 signs today, we're asking for 2 more. You have the locations. We ask for you to approve the license agreement.
Madam President, so we don't have any of the other signs that we placed, and they're beautiful, and I know the city's very proud of them, and everybody worked hard to get those in there, but we don't currently have any signs placed that direct traffic into a residential area. Hill Road, they're coming into the city, they're bypassing.
Well, they go
the
through a
2
residential area, and any signs in the existing that direct people to Gerber Park would direct people into a residential area, because all of that corridor is in a residential 4 area. So when you use a broad language like that, that's where we get to the point that we're like, are we overthinking this? We're directing people only to public amenities.
And I hear your argument there, but Gerber Park borders, it runs parallel on Hill Road as we come into Eagle. You're not going by houses and going into a development to get to Gerber Park at the end.
Well, let's be clear though, Hill Road is a collector under your master street map and under the that long-range transportation plan. That's no different than other collectors within the city that may be 2 Rivers Drive or Island Woods Way. Those are collectors, and if there's public amenities that have been located along those facilities, we're not asking for people to stop in the neighborhood. We're just telling them there's a public facility or amenity that they can go to. The city's currently working off Mace River Road to get a connection of the Greenbelt that will connect into Eagle Island State Park. We're actually currently just acquiring right-of-way access for that, including a public parking area that was dedicated interior to that subdivision. We're just trying to get people to the amenities and the investments the city's being and allow them to be used by all, not by just certain people.
Okay, further questions, Commissioner Baker?
Just to clarify, so Gerber Park is kind of at the edge of a neighborhood. What about the other parks? Are they internal to neighborhoods or what?
Merrill Park is interior to the Eagle River development. While it's not, it's internal to it. It's on a major collector within the city, Riverside Drive. It is got residential around it as well, though it fronts on a collector. I mean, those are the types of issues that we have, is you would have to drive through the River District, you have to drive through apartment complexes or past apartment complexes to get to it. So that's kind of where we're at in the city of Eagle. We've allowed development along the river corridor, which means for us to allow for access to that corridor for the Greenbelt purposes, people are gonna drive by people's houses.
And in the city of Boise, the Greenbelt is considered to be a linear park. Does Eagle consider the Greenbelt within Eagle to be a linear park?
We consider the Greenbelt to be the Greenbelt. Plaza Drive is a good example where we do have a linear park on Plaza Drive. But we don't classify it as a park. We have a park and trails master plan. So we consider amenities along the
But
river.
a linear park, okay, thank you.
All right, any further questions for Nicole? No?
Thank
Okay.
you, commissioners.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to go to the list. We only have a couple of people who have signed up. One is Miranda Gold. And if you would, please state your name and address for the record.
Council President.
Hello, Madam President and Commissioners. I'm Miranda Gold with the Eagle City Council. I'm the Council President and Council Liaison to the Eagle Art Commission. This is, as was mentioned, I'm probably going to repeat a few things that was said before, but this is an ongoing Arts Commission project, and 8 of the 10 signs have already been constructed or been placed over the last few years. Included in the license agreement is the sites for the final 2, and that's as far as the agreement goes. So that's what we would be held to. This project predates any court decision related to anything with the 2 Rivers HOA, and so it shouldn't be seen as, any kind of retaliatory effort there. Additionally, with the adoption of the integrated 5-year work plan tonight, there is the inclusion of wayfinding signs in residential neighborhoods within the city of Boise as part of the community programs bikeways project, and we would just like the city of Eagle to be able to held to the same standard as other cities. So at the city of Eagle, we respectfully request that you adopt the license agreement as your staff has prepared it without the amendments and without further delay. Thank you.
Thank you, President Gold. Are there any questions, comments? No? Okay, thank you. Next we have Kevin Zazio.
Good evening, Madam President and Commissioners. My name is Kevin Zazio. I am the Two Rivers HOA President. My address is 499 West Rivermore Lane, Eagle, Idaho 83616. And with your permission, I'd like to read my letter that I sent to the Commissioners today to get it on the record.
Actually, we have your letter and we've read it, so it will be part of the record. So there's no necessity to read it in order to make part of the record.
Very well. I would like to emphasize that I think the timing of all of this is extremely coincidental. We have a mayor who on June 11th, 2019, stated that he was going to go to ACHD to place signage on South Channel Drive. Then they immediately went to work on drafting a way signage agreement because they were able to produce that to you and have it signed in just 60 days. So I find it very ironic that the City of Eagle is coming before you today with all the litigation currently in place and is simply stating that they want to put wayfinding signs on Hill Road and Highway 55. Furthermore, I think this whole idea that there's only 10 signs is false. They'll have the right to move the signs. ACHD will not have the right to deny the signs unless there is a traffic issue, as your attorney stated to you. So I am requesting that either the language be included. I think it's benign. I think it helps differentiate the fact that, or recognizes that there's litigation in place. We have no desire whatsoever to interfere with your right or the city's right to enter into that agreement. And personally, as Commissioner May indicated, the signs are beautiful. I love them in downtown Eagle. I think the city is doing a fine job of building up our city. I would love to see them. I'd love to ride my bike downtown, but I don't want one outside my home. And that's what I'm asking you today, is to please recognize that I do not believe the city's intentions are valid here. I think the mayor is after Two Rivers. I've heard him say it many times, okay, through independent voices, and I believe that this is all a ruse to put a sign in front of Two Rivers, or inside Two Rivers. Thank you.
Okay, are there questions for Mr. Rosaccio?
Thank you.
Okay. All right, the next person who signed up, let's see. What else?
There's only one person left.
Looks like just the attorney. Oh, if you would, please state your name and address for the record.
Thank you. Andrea Carroll, P.O. Box 2006, Boise, Idaho 83701. I think, and I represent Two Rivers. I was the attorney who represented Two Rivers with for the last 2 years for this litigation, and as staff for the city of Eagle has identified both Two Rivers Way and Island River Drive, two roadways that are exclusively designed to bring Two Rivers residents within Two Rivers as appropriate places for this type of signage. So they've already identified the problem. The problem is that they're trying to direct vehicles into Two Rivers from Eagle Road, vehicles that would not ordinarily be entering into Two Rivers for the purpose of accessing the Greenbelt. The logical problem that results from that is there's no place that was secured by the city of Eagle for public parking within Two Rivers. So it creates a problem for the residents of Two Rivers that was not planned for. There is, it's already been litigated. It took 2 years. It went all through the process of summary judgment before it was dismissed in full with prejudice. Some of the initial claims were dismissed preliminarily, and then it took 2 years for all of that. There was public expense in that litigation through the City of Eagles legal representation. There was also private expense through Two Rivers. Two Rivers' goal here is to not see the duplication of litigation that has already occurred. And absent the mayor's public statement that this is exactly what he intended to do, I would be of the opinion that this is overly cautious, but it isn't, because he's already stated that this was his goal. He stated it publicly, and he stated it in direct response to losing this lawsuit. So I want to address some of the remarks before summarizing that Mr. Lakey stated. He stated that it shouldn't be about treating people differently, and I took his comment to mean that an implication that Two Rivers was asking to be for additional rights or protection than the rest of the community. But Two Rivers has already been treated differently by the City of Eagle because they were sued. They were sued by the City of Eagle to establish this public parking, and they lost. So Two Rivers has a reason to seek an express call out here, because they've already been through 2 years of litigation trying to protect the privacy of their neighborhood that they're entitled to, because it's private property and they have due process rights here. I do want to address, Commissioner Baker, your comment that it already states that you can't violate the law, correct? It already states you can't violate, and staff pointed out, it doesn't call out court orders, but it's implied. Well, just because there's a call out there that you can't violate the law through this agreement, that doesn't necessarily prevent litigation, because you have to go to court to ask a judge to decide whether or not the law has actually been violated. So it's not going to prevent the litigation. It's just going to be one of the legal issues that a court later on down the line would be asked to address after quite a while of litigation to even get to that point. So the concern is that we're duplicating, we're setting up Two Rivers, the City of Eagle, and ACHG for a dual public agency and private HOA litigation that would basically just reaffirm what has already been stated in one 4th District Court opinion. I'm sorry, I do have a lot of notes here, and then there were so many new points raised by the City of Eagle in this that I don't want to not address those. So I do want to state the agreement itself is very vague and broad, and most of the time that works for cities as well as the ACHG. In this case, where there's already a potential litigation issue that's already been brought to the attention of ACHG, we're suggesting that broad language is actually going to work against ACHG as well as Two Rivers if someone at the City of Eagle makes the decision, whether it's at a staff level or the mayor or any other person that's employed by the City of Eagle, if they're looking just at that very broad language, they're not necessarily going to understand that the commission's wishes here tonight that this not be used improperly. They're not going to have anything in front of them unless you add something like paragraph 13 to that agreement that makes it clear to them that this was not the intent. So we can all talk about the intent in this public meeting, but all of the statements that are being made today in the public meeting will not be used to govern the interpretation of this agreement. The only way to be able to clarify the intent for the benefit of a future court is to actually put paragraph 13 in there, or further restrict paragraph 1 or both. I would like to also, I was hoping to get some clarification from the city's comments tonight, exactly how they have made the express statement that they are opposed to any changes in the agreement. And the reason why is because they've stated that the city of Eagle is opposed to any changes. On what authority have they reached that statement? Because I see one council member present here today, but it's a full council decision. Is the full council aware of these proposed revisions? Is even a majority of the council aware of these proposed revisions? There's no public meeting trail to understand on what basis has the city's attorney come to ACHG stating that, quote, the city of Eagle is opposed to these changes. I don't know that they are. I can't see that they are. I can't see that the full council has even been informed of this. I think the timing says a lot. On June 11th, the mayor specifically called out ACHG signage as the way he was going to respond to this lawsuit. I think it's absolutely reasonable for ACHG to take into account those public statements, since he specifically mentioned ACHG signage in them. Thank you.
All right, are there questions? Mr. Baker, do you have a
No.
question? No, okay.
Thank you.
I have a question for our legal counsel. I have no desire to get embroiled into litigation that's ongoing between the city of Eagle and a subdivision. Is there any legal reason why we have to do anything with this right now? Could we defer this indefinitely until they resolve their litigation?
Madam President, that certainly would be an option of the commission's. ACHD enjoys plenary authority over its rights of way and therefore can decide when and it will or will not grant license agreements to use that.
Well, I mean, it sounds like this case is going to go to the Supreme Court. So I'm wondering if perhaps it might be wiser on our part to just do nothing until that process runs its course. But that's just one opinion of 5.
Madam President?
Yes, Commissioner
No, I
Baker.
understand what you're trying to say, and it does seem like somehow this whole Two Rivers thing got embroiled in this whole thing when we're just being asked to do a license agreement that our staff has brought to us, which is pretty much a standard agreement over every city. And I think that personally, the city has asked that they be able to put these wayfinding signs in. They're all over the county. The city of Boise has a ton, Meridian has a ton, and they're asking for 2 more. And quite frankly, I think the agreement that has been put together by our staff covers the issues. It's just that, it's just poisonous, but this is for the entire city of Eagle. This isn't just for Two Rivers. And so, I don't have any problem going ahead and approving it. And then if the Supreme Court decides one thing or another, then we can revisit it. But I don't see why we're involved in that when our agreement is between Eagle, the city of Eagle, and ECHD, not Two Rivers. That's a whole separate thing that they can fight out apparently till the cows come home, so.
Madam President, I would support deferring it till everything gets worked out, but I do know, because I was part of the committee years ago when they put these signs in, and the purpose was just to be in the downtown corridor and possibly looking at other phases, but just, as Mr. Lakey pointed out, directing people to the different amenities, and Eagle is full of them. When we first did this, there were 23 signs, and we had to keep cutting and cutting and cutting. I'm surprised. I thought they had agreed on 12, and at that time it was the urban renewal and the city. So I think there are tons of things to do in Eagle and other places we could put the sign, and I respectfully disagree. living in Eagle, we don't have any signage that actually takes you in through a subdivision to get to a park at the rear end of a subdivision. So I think we're kind of talking apples and oranges here. And as Commissioner Goldthorpe pointed out, there is some ill will, there is some mistrust, and we're saying that we're going to grandfather in the other 8, only 2 more, there'll be a total of 10, but we're making some pretty stringent arguments for the fact that it would be justified to put a sign in there. So that gives me a little bit of pause, and I think maybe there are some unresolved issues here, and I would like to see, you know, these signs were not conceived of intent to buy the city, but I do think the Two Rivers community has a point. They don't want cars just coming in off Eagle Road and going all the way through their subdivision to the rear end of it, where there are just, 4 parking spaces to fish. You can fish, I have people come in and fish behind my house, and there are a lot of people there every single day. I can't even imagine how many people would be there if there was a sign directing them to come in here. So I can understand their feeling that they're gonna have a lot of strange people coming in and going through their neighborhood. So I can see their point. I understand your argument about we want to celebrate the amenities that we have in Eagle. It is unfortunate that ACHD is just in the middle of this, but the city did bring this agreement to us, so we need to, or we gave it, when they came to put in the signs, how did it come to fruition?
Commissioner May, Madam President, ACHD staff was approached by the City of Eagle expressing a desire to put in additional signs. In response to that, then ACHD staff drafted the agreement.
Which was not done when the initial
That's correct.
group was put in. So I don't see why, if the intent is not to put a sign over there in Two Rivers, I mean, why the big hullabaloo as to say, you know, excluding residential areas? If that's not the intent, why can't that language be in there? So maybe, you know, we were hoping that there would be some sort of resolution and compromise. The city doesn't want to budge. The Two Rivers Association did propose a few compromises, so perhaps some more discussion would be warranted. So I just think it's unfortunate on both sides.
Yes, I will allow it. Come on up, please state your name and address for the record.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Commissioners, again, Todd Lakey, Borton Lakey Law, 141 East Carlton Avenue, on behalf of the city. I guess just a couple of points. First, these signs that we're requesting were put in the budget approved in August of 2018 for this fiscal year. And so that's when the desire to put in these signs arose. It wasn't as a result of litigation or anything along those lines. They've been in the budget since last year. As I said before, this language is simply overly broad when it restricts those references to residential areas or going through residential areas, and then the reference to the litigation has the other problem. It's too specific and specifically benefits Two Rivers. What I guess what I would suggest or offer to the commission, rather than deferring it, because we've been going through it and it has been in the ACHD, our budget to request this of ACHD since 2018, take out the proposed language. We're only asking for those 2 additional signs for a total of 10, and then put a provision in there that we would take back to council that says ACHD would have to approve any movement or moving of those signs. So they're where they are, and then you would have to approve moving.
Do that anyway. Thank you.
And I would offer that, Madam Chair, and then I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Madam President.
Seems like a reasonable, that way we know exactly where the 10 signs are and
the 2 more.
Well,
the 2 that they're,
right,
yeah.
8 plus
And
2.
it grandfathers in the 8 that are already up.
So that they not be moved without coming back to ACHD. That seems reasonable to
And
me.
I offer that, Madam Chair, as a suggestion, recognizing we still have to go back to City Council and get that approval. They've approved the agreement as it is now, without change.
Madam President,
Commissioner Hanson.
I agree with Commissioner Baker's interpretation of this. I appreciate your presentation. I've been trying to figure out the nexus between a piece of litigation regarding some parking spots that the city failed to record and lost in a lawsuit and these wayfinding signs. And I just cannot find the nexus until the attorney came up and said that there was some nefarious motives on the part of the mayor, and that I don't think is a basis for coming up with a separate type of license agreement than we have with everybody else. So I would agree if Commissioner Baker wants, or Commissioner Goldthorpe. I don't think that there's any reason to treat this city any different than we've treated any others, and I just cannot see the nexus between the two. And it really would be, from my standpoint, inappropriate to reference an unrelated piece of litigation.
Madam President, I think that's a very generous offer that Mr. Lakey is making. And that was the direction we gave 2 weeks ago for the two entities to try to come up with a compromise. And I think we heard from Two Rivers, and now the city has offered this as a compromise. So, and that was the direction given.
All right, so would someone like to make a motion to address this?
Madam President, I'll make a motion.
Well,
Thank you, Madam
Commissioner
President.
May might want to make one.
Madam President, can I be seated?
Yes.
You are excused.
Do we want to hear if that's the other party that made a proposal?
Well, you can ask the Two Rivers
Why
representative a
don't we
question
get a
if you like.
motion on the table? I think Mr. Hanson was ready to make a
Well,
motion.
I think
I
once
think
we have
I'm
a
ready to make a
motion.
motion.
Wait,
and
time
I
out,
just-
time out. Once we make a motion, I don't think we can go back and ask a question. So if you have a question for someone who's testified, then I'm gonna allow you to ask that question. And then if you want to make a motion, you can.
Okay, I would like to ask a question prior to making a motion.
Okay.
So the city has put forth a compromise that Mr. Lakey has indicated that he will indeed have to take back to the council, but is this something that would be amenable to your HOA? Could you come up to the podium and state your name and address, please?
Kevin Zazio, 499 West Rivermore Lane, Eagle, Idaho 83616. I would be very open to working with the city. We are anxious to resolve our differences. And if you give us the opportunity, we can allow either representatives of Two Rivers, it doesn't have to be me, to sit down with the City of Eagle to work out our differences and to come up with language that we're comfortable with and that would also accomplish what the city wants to do. Again, we're not against the signs. We just don't want them inside our subdivision.
But he is proposing that just the two signs for the proposed sites, and then that's the end. There are no further signs, and that they would have to come back. Is that correct, Mr. Lakey?
He was
I don't
gonna
wanna
put a
speak for
provision
you.
in that
they move
the
them.
signs would not be moved without coming back to ACHD.
Correct, and I think what we'd have to do is I'd have to confer with my attorney to make sure we can work out that language so that we're all comfortable. Is that fair?
Just a correction that
And just to-
agreements between the two legal parties, you're not a party to this agreement.
Exactly. Andrea Carroll again. It's very hard to comment on language that has not been actually drafted yet. So I think we're hedging a little bit, but we're open. Thank you.
Well, should we give him another week?
Madam President, I'm ready to make a motion.
Go ahead, Mr. Hanson. I'll second it.
Madam President, I would make a motion that we approve the master license agreement with the addition of one sentence that states that if the city moves the signs, they must request approval of the ACHD.
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Is there further discussion or any substitute motions?
I would make a substitute motion that I feel would be prudent because they were given direction to come back to us, so it is incumbent upon us to listen to what the compromise proposals are, and if they need another week to discuss it, I would make a motion to allow that.
To defer it for 1 week.
To defer it for 1 week. And I would hope with what happened tonight, that was supposed to happen in the last 2 weeks could come to fruition.
All right, I will second the substitute motion. Is there discussion on the substitute motion? No. Hearing none, all those in favor of the substitute motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, nay.
Nay.
Okay, so the substitute motion fails 3-2. we'll go back to the original motion that Commissioner Hanson made, which adds a sentence that if the signs are to be moved, the city has to come back to ACHD for permission. Is there any further discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay.
Nay.
Motion passes. All right. I don't think it matters. They got 3 votes, so.
It's easy when you don't live in the city. You want your city to all get along.
I have signed.
I think Paul Bagel wanted to make some public comment, just kidding.
Say what?
I think we beat that horse to
Are we
death.
adjourned?
Yes.
Oh,
we're
are
adjourned.
we?
Oh, I'm sorry. Is there anyone who would like